You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of Gloves Off. I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and every week I do this show. It's a great way to end that week that was before and a great way to start the new week that's coming up ahead. So we are already at the end of October. It's crazy how fast time flies, but I have to say October is my favorite month of the year. I love the fall weather. I love cool, crisp stuff and, like pumpkin lattes and all the things that are associated with fall. And well, tomorrow is my birthday. So I'm actually taking the day off because that's something I've done for a long time. As you guys may know from people who watch this show regularly, I'm a big proponent of self-care and taking care of oneself and really living joyously. And for me, that means not working on my birthday. It means doing whatever I want, which is usually a whole lot of different things. So anyway, I hope that you guys also take some of those same philosophies and really do some great self-care for yourself, not just on your birthday, but really every day. So for those of you who are new to Gloves Off, it's a show about people who are courageous and really take their gloves off, strip their egos, show up courageously in the world, do something that's different, maybe a little more difficult than maybe society would recommend us doing. So that's really the type of guest that I interview on the show every week. So, and of course, for those of you who have been watching, I always appreciate it. And please, if you like this show, it's streamed on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on my YouTube channel. All of the names are the same, drkalpana.unbound. So you can find me there. Please like, subscribe. Love to hear your comments. So this week, I have a very special guest. Her name is Gurjit Rana, and she is actually in the UK. So I love when I travel and I do all these different things. And I met her at this conference, Mind Valley University, that I went to back in July. And we just had a great connection of people over there. And, I believe she is actually the first one that I'm about to interview on the show. So she calls herself the marriage expert. And I love this concept because, right now we are just staggering with crazy divorce rates. And people almost expect that marriages don't work. And I am kind of a hopeless romantic at heart. And I don't believe that that's the case. I believe that there is hope for marriages, that people just have to view them differently. And I really feel like that is her philosophy too. She believes that, if your marriage is meh, you can really do some things to spice it up. But we're going to get into that conversation in just a little bit. But of course, I always have to thank my sponsor, Elevated CPA, for sponsoring the show every week. if you're looking for an accountant and need somebody to do your taxes because, well, they're freaking complicated once you have a lot of businesses, so you may want to consider using them. So back to our guest. So she also has this program called the Marriage Makeover, and that's her mentorship program. But I have to say, I really am excited to deep dive into this conversation because I think a lot of us wonder if there's a possibility of having this amazing relationship, and a lot of us really crave that, even if we don't want to admit it. So I think we better hear it from the expert and find out what this is all about. So welcome, Gurjit. Hello, welcome to Gloves Off.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I've been so excited to get into this conversation with you because I know that so many of us are either married and maybe our marriages are like, whatever. It's like, it's not great. You don't like go, just feel so supported and cared for. And, you should feel joy. And I think that's something that gets lost in the mundane and the day-to-day of marriage, probably pretty quickly if you're not working at it. And then there's some of us who are divorced, the marriages just didn't work out for whatever reason, like me, and, really hope to be in a relationship that feels way better than the first one. And then there's probably those people who are completely like cynical and feel like it's not possible. And then of course there's the hopeless romantics. So probably like not even realistic about what we're thinking. So I think there's a lot of different places that could go. So I would say that, let's start with why this is important to you. What made you go into this line of work? Why do you enjoy it?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, you captured the market so perfectly. Like, we're all in different spaces, we're all in different, think of love in different ways, and there is no right way, right? Wherever you are is absolutely perfect, but it's to ask yourself, am I happy being there? And really, that's where my story began. Some 14 years ago, I'd married and I was living with an extended family, and just shy of 3 years into the marriage, problems showed up and they became exaggerated, they became exposed. And instead of the problems bringing us together, it was almost we were fighting over the problems, as all couples do. We're in that first phases of our marriage where we've got this massive power struggle on. And some people, they stay in that space for decades. Unfortunately, for me, I didn't know any better. And all I thought about was, how do I get out of this? And I went to my partner, or my husband at the time, and said, look, can we resolve the things at home? Can we move out, thinking, yay, that's my escape route? And the third door, which I wasn't even thinking about, became my actual door, which was, do we end it? Do we have a divorce? And it was almost like out of, I want to say, stubbornness as well, and righteousness, and, just not thinking straight. When your emotions are high, your intelligence is low. Very, very, very true.
Oh, I love
And there
that.
I was.
So true. So true.
And that was it. I'd walked out on a marriage that hardly had begun. And I was adamant that I wanted to learn from this because I'd spent a decade before that, like so many of us, wanting love, pining for love, being that romantic, hopeless person, or thinking, is it me? Then it's blaming them, all of it on the merry-go-round, like literally trying to get off the merry-go-round. And therefore, for me, that heartache and heartbreak at the time of leaving my husband was not an easy decision. And again, I always say this, that, it doesn't matter whether you're in the relationship or whether you're leaving the relationship. It's not an easy space or any decision. Like, who are we to judge people? The only question you've got to ask yourself is, have I done everything in my power? And that was really me. I hadn't. Like, back in my time, yes, counselling existed, but they were non-Asian. And so immediately, like we do, we have a predictability meter. My predictability meter came out when I can tell you what they're going to say, hun. They're going to say, move out. You don't want to because you're an only son, so let's not bother. So we didn't even bother making an appointment with a counsellor or anybody because I didn't have any belief in them, which is quite sad.
Well, Yes, but you really bring up a good point. When people are not of the same culture, because obviously I understand the Asian culture very well, it's very, very different. So I think there really needs to be more diversity in the space of counseling to really understand, or maybe there needs to be training around it. Not that somebody has to be Asian to understand, but they need to be at least aware of the different cultures and how they view marriage and all that. So that's a really important point.
Absolutely. I was 25, so even before I met my husband, I'd had a engagement that broke down, and really that was the one that led me to a door of a counsellor. And the counsellor seemed to have given me very, say, blunt and practical advice, which was leave your parents, leave home, abandon home, and just go off and live for yourself. And 25 years old, being a South Asian woman, just starting her career, none of that even felt possible because I hadn't lived out at uni. So for me, it was impractical advice. And so therefore, I already had a negative view about counselling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic that I've become a coach myself because I didn't see that one coming.
Well, maybe you wanted to set that stage correct, to do what you could in your power to even that playing field. That's doesn't seem correct in many ways.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately what happened. The minute I was working with a life coach at work, I was working for a major corporate company, and we were looking at plans for me to be progressed into a different area of the business and also in a different country. And every time that coach had asked me, how's life at home? Every morning I'd come in and I'd be going, not today, right when I'm having that conversation today. And so after I'd left my ex-husband, she was the first person I turned to. And, the question, this is why I said it's not easy whether you stay or whether you go, because there was one question I asked myself. And, somebody said it yesterday that when you silence yourself, as in just go quiet for a moment, you can think. And I had gone to my religious place of worship, which is a Gurdwara, a temple, Sikh temple. And it's like somebody had asked me that question, like, can you do this for the next 30, 40 years? And immediately I shook my head and said no. And I got my answer. So, like I said, it's not positioning the blame on anybody else. I chose that for myself. I wholeheartedly own that decision. And, if I could turn back the clock now, through all the tools and all the things that I know, obviously I would. However, back then I didn't know what I didn't know. So my purpose was really born out of that. And it was another, I'd say about 6-7 years before I stepped into what I do today. Because at that time I was just like, heck, heal me. Somebody's cut me open and I just feel like, as you do, heartbroken, blaming everybody else and just not even aware, at some points not sleeping, not eating, a lot of insomnia, and just questioning, why am I here? What's my reason for being on planet Earth? So it felt like dark days, and they too shall pass, as they say. And eventually, as I worked with this coach, who I went on to work with personally, I just began to see a whole new world of life through NLP or becoming certified. And even then at that point, I was like, Kalpana, I'm not doing this. I just can't, So long came an opportunity with a TV station for a Sky Seek channel called Sungat TV. I had gone to do a bit of strategy work for them. Also challenged them on their matrimonial service because I was like that fed up. I was like, I just want to disrupt it. How dare they continue to do speed dating? It doesn't work. Have they not learned anything from all these divorce rates, as you say, going up? And the next thing I get invited on. They said, look, we've looked into you a little bit. There's more to you. Would you be open to hosting, directing a TV show around coaching? So I was one of the very first in the UK to be given that opportunity.
That's amazing. I love that.
Thank you. The show translation was called Dok Sok, which means from pain to happiness, for those of you that do understand Punjabi. And again, I wasn't really owning my space. I kept bringing on other coaches on the London network and subtly playing in there, peppering it with, I do a little bit of relationship coaching, until it really happened. The show aired and we had all walks of life ringing our hotlines, from men that were stuck between mum and wife, young ladies that were still being forced into marriages, people in domestic violence. We'd heard about sexual abuse, and the list goes on. And at that point, I realized that there was a need. And even then, I was known as the relationship coach. And gradually, I began to see more people like me, or more of me.
Wow.
Um,
So is your clientele predominantly Asian or not necessarily?
No, it's not necessarily. It's happened by accident, which I can totally get.
Hmm.
But we have worked with clients in Venezuela, in Dubai, in the States, and they predominantly used to be non-Asian actually. And gradually, just because of how I come across now, and I've become more and more comfortable, we gain Asians and non-Asians, mixed couples as well.
Mm,
But we kind of today, I would say, look at two areas. We go when you're at the make it and break it phase, which so many of us are. We get to that
mhm.
ropes and kind of going, how do we get back from this on the
Right.
brink of divorce? And then there's another area which is probably not talked about so much because we don't deem it as important as the make or break, but it's those that are okay or good but want to
Mm.
go to greatness. So we've all seen those couples where we see them really, like you were saying, love dark, still like they're teenagers, but they're in their 40 pluses, and you're thinking, how did they get on? What's their magic formula?
Hmm.
So I help those couples that still struggle with that communication or just the change of lifestyle as you adapt from your children being at primary schools into high school and their hormones are kicking in and your hormones are kicking in with menopause. So there's that whole area to navigate. Or it's your children have left home because they're going off to uni and now you go, oh my God, who are you? I spent 20 odd years raising your children, but I ain't got a clue who you are.
So true. And that's the thing. I don't think that anybody properly prepares us for how many transitions one faces in a marriage. I mean, I was married at 24. So there are so many transitions, like you said, even just the children growing up, leaving home, career transitions, health issues, transitions with family members. Maybe there's a sick family member, a loved one, something like that. It is just hormones, like you said, so many transitions that nobody's talking about. I also find it really interesting that you're really primarily dealing with people that are, I feel like, a little bit different than the traditional, for lack of a better word, Caucasian couple. Because when I went to marriage counseling, I just really didn't feel like, I didn't feel like things were addressed as properly as, so I kind of get where you had that narrative that it wasn't going to work because I did it and it was many, many years later. This was maybe possibly, but even then it just was not something that I felt comfortable in, and nor did I really feel like they took time to understand the situation. So it's a hard space. First of all, it's a vulnerable space. And then it's hard because there's a lot of differences. Like there's a difference between different races and different cultural upbringing. Obviously, interracial marriages have their own set of things, which I never even realized because I was married to an American man. And I actually realized there was quite a bit of cultural issues that I didn't realize.
Oh my goodness, there's even, how do I put it, cultural and caste issues within the blimmin' same caste and culture. You
True,
don't have to be
I know.
different. Like, when I was married, I married the same person, as in the same sect and same religion and everything else. And you think, well, how badly different is your upbringing going to be? And it was wildly different. And that was the point, that I thought this is going to be easy. I've lived with a family all my life. You've lived with a family all your life. You're Punjabi. I'm Punjabi.
Right.
Boom. We've got all the equation that's equals, but it wasn't. And that was the thing, that the fundamental beliefs, values, morals, so different, which
Right.
didn't prepare me. And there's one thing I will say, that's, I was 32 when I got married. I'm obviously not that now. But one of the things, it doesn't matter whether you get married in your 20s, 30s, or 40s. Whatever you're supposed to go through, you're going to go through it. And so many of us, I'll put my hand up to it, that think, yeah, it won't happen to me.
Mm.
I'm too clever for it. Like, really, I thought, oh, I've seen it all, I've heard it all, and this is how you kind of get around stuff. But no, you will, whatever you're supposed to face, you're supposed to face. And
Mm.
unfortunately, I don't think, certainly in the UK, and I could be sure of the rest of the world, that we don't have an education system that's focused on social skills, on communication, you
Right.
know, or on, just how we how we say sorry to each other. We
Mm-hmm.
hear those words, I love you, I'm sorry, do you trust me, and all the rest of it. But do we? Do we actually say what we're sorry for? Do we actually say what I love about you?
Oh,
So
that's so true. And really, I feel like marriage is so much about communication and navigation. You know, where you're navigating different challenges and hurdles and changes, transitions, and the communication through those different transitions is, I mean, this is my assumption that that's where a lot of the problems really arise. That's what I've seen. I was married for, almost 24 years, and that's what I see. And then also communication styles are very different amongst people. And there, sometimes you can meet in the middle and learn to understand each other. Both parties are receptive, but other times one party is unreceptive to adjusting their communication style to so that they can better understand each other. I don't know. That's just what I've seen in my past
abs-
dating,
absolutely.
marriages, whatnot.
Yeah, and look, I mean, more may have heard this stat, so I apologize if you've heard it before. We know that communication, the actual words, are only 7%, which means there's a whole 93% of communicating through your body, your tonality, your facial expressions that add to the message, and we create so much meaning behind it. So it's breaking that down of going, we think it's the 7% that damages your relationship, but it's not. It's actually the 93% that's combined with the 7% that amplifies what someone's feeling or how you've made them feel. So, that was one of the hardest things. It's, that saying that goes, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it.
Yeah, yeah. But I never really, it's so true. I don't know that I've really thought about it that way, but I would say that I've been in situations where somebody's actually saying all the right things, but I didn't feel them. And that really eroded the relationship. And this is honestly, these are skill sets that are not just important in marriages. They are skill sets that are hugely important in every relationship, whether it be a friendship, your children, your parents, all of it. I have to say that that's something that I've embarked on over the past several years, is improving my communication skills, to be true to myself and yet to say things in a way that is not hurtful to the other person, but still communicates my truth, which sounds easy, but has taken me many, many years, and I'm still fine tuning it.
And we all are. And the thing is, we put on the mask, as we all know, when we go to work, we have to put on the front that we know how to communicate. We want to be professional. We want to be seen as organized and know our stuff. And when we come home, it's like we let it all go, right? And we don't think about, as the saying goes, why do I get the worst of you? Why can't I have the best of you? Why do you give me the worst bits of you at the end of the day? Why can't I see the best of you first thing in the morning?
Mm.
And it comes from that space of, we will do everything to impress on the outside world, create our world being, but it actually comes from the inside. And that's where a lot of our, say, disconnection with our loved ones, with ourself, and of course with our loving partner. So you're right, this is not just about relationships romantically or in marriage. A lot of the stuff that I tend to go through stems and looks like at your past, at your childhood, at the inner child work, and right the way through to where you are now and how you got here. So when most people come to me, couples kind of want to indulge in the whole, she said this, he said that. We don't even do that. I refuse to be what I call a referee in the middle. If you want to take straights off of each other, you do that in your own time.
Yeah.
But I show up for people in a real compelling way that says, look, I will talk to the husband first, because men don't get heard or understood. They always think that we know, I know everything from the lady. And then that reassurance and trust is in place. And then we talk to the female. And then from there, we start building out the coaching program, because it's bespoke to the couple. No.
Well, I think that's great. Well, I'll tell you one thing is that when my ex-husband and I went to a counselor or whatever, I don't think it was a coach at the time, but he said that very clearly. He goes, "Oh my God, she's a woman, so she's only going to listen to you and she's going to take your side." So men do have this kind of preconceived idea, and they don't have it easy either. I want to make just one point about something we just talked about. Oh my God, now it just went away from my head. Oh my God, it'll come
Sorry
back
if I
to me.
too
That's
fast
okay.
for
No,
you.
no, there was something really important that I wanted to bring up about something you said earlier, and now it has escaped me, but that's okay. Let's kind of move on to what I was thinking about, men being misunderstood. I have to say that in my life, I've always been kind of like, I'm a big advocate of women, of course, but as I move through my own journey, I'm really starting to see, because I have a lot of very, very, very close male relationships. So I say that I have more close male friendships than female, for sure. And it's always kind of been that way all my life, and I've never known why. But maybe that's part of my journey, is to understand both sides, right? So, I have two sons who are adults, and then I have a lot of very close male friends. So that being said, they're really vulnerable with me, and they will tell me how hard it is to put on this front of having it all together, being all, unemotional and all those things. And I feel that societal conditioning affects men just as much as it affects women. I talk a lot about how it affects women because I am a woman, so I understand that better. But I'm really starting to have a finer appreciation for how difficult it is to be a man in this society. And then I feel that because of their societal conditioning and our societal conditioning, it really becomes harder to bridge that communication gap, is what I feel. This is my new revelation of recently.
It is so true, Calvin. I mean, yes, we've all, again, may have heard the term masculine, feminine, it gets thrown around so much. Actually, it's a really tough thing being a guy these days. Here's why. Firstly, we've got women that are now breadwinners in the family.
Mm-hmm.
That was 20 years ago probably not thought of, or not as high as a percentage.
Uh-huh.
But we have more men certainly coming out of lockdown that have got stay-at-home work roles, or have a partner that's the breadwinner, men that are taking care both the home front on a domestic level and on a personal level with their children, and get involved in childcare, maybe helping taking care of the elderly. So a couple of my client couples, that's what those kind of challenges are, that the dynamics have completely changed, that they don't know how to be masculine. If anything, they've become more calm, soft, and not feminine per se,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot more calmer. And therefore, when they've got a fiery lady coming at them, they're almost like taking for cover as well, because they're going, that's how my mum used to be. So this is where that projection starts to happen. So you're right, men do not get heard, and therefore they don't think it's a problem until it's a problem. So that's one thing I will say, is that almost in all cases, 95% of the time, it's the female that instigates the divorce. It's not the male.
Yeah,
And
I would say I've heard those statistics, and it's surprising. Men, again, there's some men out there are not the best. That's for sure. But I'm very fortunate, and I know some really amazing men. They're kind, they're considerate, they're really, really wonderful human beings. And oftentimes I feel like they don't really get understood as well. So, it's probably, I always get asked, because I'm always speaking on women's topics, and people are like, do you hate men? I'm like, no, it's actually the opposite. What I would really want to see in this world is a better understanding of men and women, really to embrace that masculine and feminine within each of us, so that we can understand each other more effectively. So,
yeah, I mean, if you think, and I'm going to be mindful of what's going on in the world, but most of the time when we see a crisis in the world somewhere, who gets protected first? It's men, children and women.
mhm.
And there is a slight sympathetic ear towards ladies. And by the way, I've got no challenges. I have lots of friends, both men and women and women. And I just think that this whole piece around femininity, that's one thing I will bring out,
Mhm.
has possibly pushed it too far.
I
And
think so too. I agree with you.
and that's almost forced us to go into our masculine, forced us to start, you know, being a boss lady, for want of a better word. We've
Mhm.
used those terms that we've seen on social media
Yes.
and totally being misconstrued. And
Yeah.
therefore, no wonder there are men left going, do you know what? I don't even want to date someone because they're intimidated by us, or they just feel, well, I can't live up to your aspirations or your needs. We already know that was a challenge previously, but the way that the salaries and the gaps are getting, yes, they're narrowing, but
Mhm.
are they narrowing in the wrong direction, where men just feel like they're not worthy either of a decent woman?
Yeah. And I also wonder if sometimes I feel like, so the way I see it is there's toxic femininity, meaning like, I got everything, I can do everything, that whole bravado crap, I know that very well because I've done that. So I've done that. And then I'm like, okay, well, that was just me
How was that
overdoing.
going?
Yeah, this is not going well. And I think that was what led to the demise of my marriage, to be honest with you. I mean, it was easy for me to say he was this, he was that. But the reality is I was a lot of things that I'm not proud of. And, men really want to be able to provide and take care of, but they need the space to do that. I didn't give anybody any space to do that. I was a control freak. So, and I was hyper pushed into my masculine, being a surgeon, being a business owner, and all the things. Well, after leaving medicine, I have been able to embrace much more of my feminine side, my vulnerability. And I feel that maybe there's always a balance that's evolving, but I feel like I'm finally at a good balance between I'm still a business owner, I'm still doing all the things, I still want to change the world and all of those things, but I have room for a man who is a true masculine divine leader, because I don't have to always be in charge. I'm really happy to have somebody else take charge now. But it takes a while for a woman who starts off in this majorly masculine role to figure that out. So I think what I will say is that I think as women learn how they can still value their independence, but they don't have to be this toxic, hyper toxic femininity thing, because it doesn't leave room for men to know where they even fit into that world.
Correct. And just picking on that point, that if you think, and you'll probably resonate with this, most rooms where I see personal development or any kind of training taking place, this was the other thing, and why I chose to work with couples is men are being left behind. So
Mm-hmm.
women are now kind of upgrading themselves in the whole personal development, self-love, self-care. We're getting all into that. And that is continuing to propel us further into, some people saying, I've done the transformation work. And when you actually talk to them, you think, no, the theory, you haven't applied it. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And again, there's been a gap that's been widening for men. So one of the things that was really important that I step changed for me anyway, of who I work with, was previously it was just ladies or just working with men on their own. But now that for me is like, actually, to give your marriage a really best chance, why would I not work with both the husband and the wife? So,
I would agree.
I would say to you that if you have, if there's a man listening, watching, and if there's a female that's got some amazing male friends, encourage them to do the work. There's, still, and I'm sure, like I said, Calvin, Mind Valley probably was a reminder of this as well, that it was almost like 60% to 60% women to 40% men, or even less, like 30% men.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a huge gap.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there definitely is. And I've remembered what I was wanting to say. You had mentioned earlier about the mask. We put on the mask when we go to our jobs and whatnot. I just wanted to challenge that concept and say, what if we just don't ever have to put on a mask, so that we don't feel exhausted by putting on that mask and then having to come home and let it go for our partner? I say this because I lived that life as well, where I went to work and put on the surgeon mask and the business owner mask, et cetera, et cetera. And those things really didn't feel very authentic to me. And now what I'm seeing in my own life is that I don't really have to put on a mask at work. I don't need to be any certain way. The way I only do things that are authentic to me, so I could show up in my real me. So for example, this show, if I had to put on a mask to do this show, I would not enjoy it. So then when the show is done, I'm like, I'm crabby to, I don't have a partner right now, but I would be crabby because I had to put on a mask. But that's not the case. When I don't feel like I have to put on a mask, I don't feel that anything shifts within me. And I notice a stark difference from my days in medicine. So I think I say that for all of you out there too. If you find that you are putting on a mask, let's figure out how to remove it, how to be our most authentic version of ourselves, because then we don't feel like we have to do extra work.
Absolutely. And look, whether you're in a relationship or not, there's a couple of places you can start. Firstly, you start to own the narrative that you have about your love life. And that's really easy. You just ask yourself some simple questions, which is, what do I believe about marriage? What do I believe about love? What do I believe about my last partner? You'll start to see and hear what's holding you back. And it has nothing to do with the next guy or the next girl hasn't come along. Mm-hmm. Right. And even in your marriage, you'll see your projections of, wherever you're at, so even the people that say, meh, It's not meh. It's just whether you want to change that meh to something better, like, oh, all of
Right.
that.
And, some of us never have seen an example of a beautiful marriage. I mean, I have seen some really amazing examples of marriages, which I feel fortunate, not for my parents necessarily, but I just, in general, I look for it. So I actually do believe it's possible. And I think it's highly probable to have a very successful relationship. But I believe that both parties have to be equally committed to that end goal. I think that's where the problem is. I find that what I see is one person's maybe more committed to their own growth or their relationship growth, maybe more than the other person. So again, who is it? I think Dr. Shafali said this. I don't know if it's Dr. Shafali, but I had seen something that said, don't marry a person because you love them. Marry them because you can grow with them. I think it was Dr. Shafali. I'm pretty positive
Yes.
I've seen her say
Yeah.
that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that is really the most important thing. And that is actually the thing that I am looking for, not just love. It's the person that I feel I can grow the most with so that we can grow together. Otherwise, if one person wants to grow and the other doesn't, then there's a real problem.
100%. And that's where, when somebody asks that question, no, love is not enough.
Mm-mm.
Love is not enough. Unfortunately, that was one of my downfalls as well. It's not that you don't need it or want it. It's what you choose. What do you choose in that moment? And there's just so many, like even from Dr. Shafali, of there are 5 areas that we typically argue about. We all argue about them at varying degrees. So we will say, yes, the communication's bad, or we will say the kids, the money, the trust, and of course the intimacy. But you could almost see them like a domino effect. If one goes, then of course they all begin to knock down.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to fix it from that level, that's a surface level issue. The actual challenge is a lot more deeper than that. That's just the outcome of what's been happening in your marriage or happening in your relationship. But you have to be willing to go deeper. And that point you were making, that it's not about, it's like when a couple first get married, you think, yay, we're together, we do everything. You've got, Gary Chapman's love languages going on all over the place that you don't even know what's yours and what's your partner's. But
Right.
when the dust settles, right, and again, Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this, it's like called the lipstick effect. When that halo effect wears off, the power struggle begins. When the honeymoon period pairs off, you go into battle.
Yep.
And it's because you're somewhere trying to fight back for your old life, the identity. And then there's somewhere you're trying to learn how to communicate with each other. And because you said it beautifully, we don't have a blueprint from our parents. How many times I say to people, you can play along if you're watching this, rate your parents' relationship out of 10. Are they your role models? And then rate your own relationship out of 10. And as you were saying, Calvin, like look around you, see who else you can rate out of 10. And it's not all of a sudden, oh, okay, then I'm all right then, because so and so's not doing good either.
It's so true. And also, there's a lot of variables in that, meaning that different people want different things out of a marriage. So, for example,
Correct.
I see people that are really just content having somebody just take care of them. And that's enough. Like they provide financially, they're around, and they're a good human being, and that's enough. And that's great. But that wouldn't work for me per se.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't work for me because I can take care of myself and I want somebody who can also take care of himself, but I need more than that. Then there are people who just want to just have fun and that's it. And they don't care about emotional growth, spiritual growth or whatever. And then again, I'm not picking apart these things. It's just that I think as human beings, we have to identify what is the need that we need filled that isn't filled on our own. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it would be added to with the relationship. So, for me, I'm pretty self-sufficient. I have a very happy life, but I want something that adds a lot of value. So the difficulty for me is adding the value.
So that's it. You hit the nail on the head. It's about relationship values. That's exactly what we cover in
There
the
we go.
mentorship
That's what I was
program.
trying to say. I just said it in a long-winded way.
No. And that's it. It's like, we hear the words, I want to be appreciated. I want to be respected. You should know what I do for you. But actually, it's what do you bring to the table? And what you bring to the table is what's going to come back at you. So when you can write down, this is what I value, or this is what I need, then ask yourself, am I being that? Because it's regardless of if the other person's there. And if you can show up every day in your loving center, right, in your loving armory, then it's impossible for someone not to be magnetized by you. And then it's just a matter of time,
It's such
that
a
you'll
such a
attract.
beautiful point. Do you know one of the things that I've been saying that I want in my life from a partner? Joy. Do you know what
Yeah.
I just figured out? Is that I can bring that to myself every day I wake up and I say, what is going to be my joy today? What is going to be my joy? And it's funny. I watched this silly movie. It wasn't silly. I actually really liked it. Inside Out. Inside Out, is that
Yes.
the movie? The little kids movie?
Yeah.
I watched it
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
plane. It was the cutest movie because, it talks about joy. And as we become adults, I remember there was a statement in that movie, we don't have the space for joy, or we don't get to experience joy. And I thought to myself, wow, this is what every single one of us adults think. And now I literally wake up every day and I say, oh, how many things am I going to do that bring me joy today? I'm not just going to focus on work and my errands and blah, blah. No, no, no. What is my joy? What's that going to be today? And every day I find it. And every day I find it, I find more of it. It's amazing how that works.
And joyous is about being curious.
Ooh, that's
Joyous is about being curious, because if you don't wake up and be curious, because listen, it, most of us, like I say, have a predictability meter going on. We know what our partner's going to say. If I say how many times, hey, say this to your partner. No, I know what they're going to say. They'll never do that. They'll never do that. You're already a naysayer. You're
mm,
judging that your reaction or whether your effort based on your partner. And, one way of reframing, that's what I do as part of the coaching, is to say, okay, what do you say? Forget your partner for a moment. What do you say? And when you become curious to look at other ways, there are so many possibilities. But we get trapped and we get fixated on this way is the only way. So that's why I love what I do, because I was that person once that was about my mother-in-law's like this, my husband's like that.
right.
This is how my world is. And I was trapped in my own 4x4 cell, which was called my brain, my
Mm.
mindset. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And I was trying to, and what I needed to do was to shift this. Oh God, I've got some
Oh,
fireworks
I was
going off
like,
in the
that's kind
background.
of
That's kind of cool.
that was that was so funny because it was kind of like a mind blowing. Like, it's like that is so cool.
You're in
I,
Ethiopia moment.
I think that was the universe just like saying, yeah, that's it. That's important. That's
Yeah,
so crazy.
exactly. Like, ta-da! So once you can get yourself untrapped, then you won't feel so trapped. And that's what most of us do, is when it's like when people say, hey, I want boundaries, like he doesn't respect my boundaries or she doesn't respect. If you put a boundary, who's actually stuck in the boundary?
Yeah,
The other person's going to keep doing what they're going to do. But
so true.
every time you try and enforce a boundary, should I say, a forced boundary, you're the one that's stuck in it.
So
And the real work is looking at, okay, how do I be where I don't feel so stuck? How do I be where I can be free and I can let the other person be free?
And that's huge too, because in my old mind, when I was like young, I just thought that marriage was this like restrictive covenant, and I think that's a big shift that's happened within me, that now I feel like it's a place for both people to be freely in their full expression and free. I mean,
Yeah,
within whatever you guys decide is, okay and what's not okay. I don't even think that's for society to decide, but whatever that is, if both people and both parties are agreeable to whatever that is, then I believe you can feel free within a relationship. Not
exactly.
feel stuck.
Exactly. I mean, look, I do get it. Growing up in a very strict household, a lot of us didn't feel free as women, right? You were
Mhm,
told when you're married, you can do what you like. Then you get married and you either end up with in-laws or you end up with a partner that's very restrictive. You will continue feeling that same level of resentment.
mhm.
And you feel that resentment towards your family, you feel that resentment towards your partner, and it continues because you're yearning to be just let out. But once you get that there's no physical chains put on you, but it's the construct of your mind and how you relate to yourself, of course you're going to feel stuck. So there is work behind the work that you need to be doing, not just to actively make your relationship work, but for yourself. That fulfillment that most of us say, I don't have, that is a you job to do, right? It's not it will get fixed soon as I get married, because hey, now I'm married to you. It's all on you to make me smile, which is what a lot of us faced. I got
Oh,
told this by my
totally.
ex-husband.
Totally. It's funny because I don't know if you knew that I wrote a book. That's exactly what my book is about. Just me feeling trapped. I called it Beauty Unbound because it was like like I felt trapped. I felt like I had chains and my wrists and you're right. I didn't realize at the time that if I, lived my life in this trap sensation, just feeling like I had to do what everybody wanted me to do, et cetera, that was going to go into my marriage. And then I felt trapped. I felt trapped in my career. After a while, you realize it wasn't anybody else's fault except your own, that you realize you created this in your own mind, like you're saying. That freedom is within our grasp. And again, all we have to do is get ourselves out of this mindset that we have. I think it's huge. And a lot of us feel stuck in many ways.
We do. And look, as I say, there's something about being aware. And when you're aware, you can obviously do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of us that sit on the fence and we watch some great podcasts like this, like Dr. Kaufner's, we'll be sitting there and going, yeah, this all makes sense. Then do something about it. What's the worst that can happen? You could be happy. You could be happy.
Well, that's a good point too, because I think some people out there are actually afraid to be happy because it's scary. I mean, there is that too. Like you want to be happy. Of course, it sounds great, but it's almost scary to be happy. I know I felt that way at times. I mean, I have. I mean, I'm like, oh, if I get everything I want, will it be scary? And you know what? I felt that, but I have to say that I'm really at a point where I have all the things that I really, really cared about. Freedom of location, living where I want, being able to travel, all the things, there's one thing I'm still waiting for. But again, I don't think I'm afraid to have everything I want anymore. And maybe that comes from a lack of feeling like you deserve it. I think for a lot of us, it's that. I mean, I struggled with that as well, and I've gone through the journey with like, oh, well, do I really deserve to have all the things I want? And, it's just been recently that I'm like, yeah. And then all of a sudden it's all the things really do start showing up once you believe you're worthy. I didn't really believe this, to be honest with you. I know I've heard it, I've seen it. I'm like, but I don't know. Like, is it really true? But it is.
Because we took every bit of pride in our work, in our career, because it was the one thing that nobody could do for you. You could do it for yourself, and you chose to do it for yourself. You
Right.
chose to how do I put it? Put in the work at school, at uni, college. You went on to go for those promotions. You went on to work those late nights because you thought, well, that's another way to avoid marriage, right? For
Right.
some people. But you take a lot of pride in that, and then along the way, you kind of then ask yourself, but what for? And
Right.
that's honestly, because I swear to you, that was. I haven't talked about this side of the journey. When you do leave a partner, and I know you're related to this partner, there is a whole point of your life where a little bit you go into limbo. You really go into this I'm lost space. And then you're trying to ground yourself. But as you're grounding yourself, the whole time you're asking, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Why am I going to work? Why am I earning this money? What am I supposed to now do with it? Because everything I'd done, I was building it either towards a wedding, and now I'm building it towards a home. But guess what? I don't have that home anymore. I don't have that future anymore. Now what's my future? So it can be overwhelming, as we all know. There can be a lot of anxiety. And it is a moment not just to go, well, okay, I'll cry it out, I'll sit it out and figure it out afterwards. I am so grateful. As I said, it was like a flick of a switch for me that I had found a coach that I was already working with. Yeah, I was resisting her because she kept asking me what's going on at home. And I was like, none of your business. It was like the typical corporate hand winds going up. And she said something to me, which always stays with me, which is your home life reflects how you feel on the inside.
Ooh.
Your work life reflects what happens on the outside.
Well, I just got chills. I think really that needs to be stated again. I mean, honestly, like it takes a minute to really absorb that.
Yeah. So your home life is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. And your work life is reflecting what's going on the outside of you. So you can make your outside world as better. You can work harder. You can go for as many promotions and everything you like. But when you come home, and if you're coming home with again, I'm tired, I ain't got time for you, or get off my back, that's everything. There's conflict that's going on within you. And I ignored it for such a long time. And there was something powerful that my own brother-in-law had said to me when I returned home. And he said, Gurjit, how did you expect to get on with somebody else's in-laws when you don't know how to get on with your own parents and siblings? I was like, But he was so right. And it was in that moment that I decided, okay, I never want to be this person again. I cannot be this person again. So I turned myself inside out. And that's why when so many marriages are going through turbulence, I have that for them as well of going, look, you can stay stuck, you can stay where you are, you can still keep banging two pots together, or you can figure out how to be in harmony. So what would you like?
That's
Right?
so true. And that's the thing. At the end of the day, I think that's the thing. We have to just make a decision. Do we want to be right or do we want to have harmony? And that's not, I think in the past, I used to think that meant that I had to dishonor what I really wanted, but there is a way to do both. You know, there really absolutely is. So it just such an enlightening conversation. I mean, I actually want to take these last few minutes that we have for you to talk about your actual program, you know, what it involves. If you can give everybody a synopsis of, you know, how your
Sure.
program works.
Sure, thank you. So it's very easy. You can book in a call with myself. I will give an hour each to both the man and the wife. The husband you typically goes first. Like I said, it's important that men are seen and heard first. And if we connect, the trust is already built, then I speak with the female, the wife, and then from there we agree a coaching package because we have a couple of coaching packages and they've spoke to you guys of what you're dealing with. So there will be instances where I say, look, it's not going to take many sessions. We can do a short program, which is something like communication through to creation. And there's, 3 other C's in the middle. Or there's my signature program, which is a 12-week program, which can be done over 12 weeks or 6 months. So it varies. But typically the program is done half and half. So in other words, I work with you both individually for the first 6 weeks of the program, for the first half of it. Then I bring you two together and then we can have some collaborative conversations around money, around intimacy, around the communication issues, around setting boundaries, around anything to do with kids and creation of your next phase of your life. All of that comes into play in the second half of the program. But in the first half, it's understanding who you are, what you want, and what's not working in your marriage. Because imagine if I put two birds in a cage, of course they're going to go at it, which is why we don't do that. I literally work with you both so that, as I say, we get those emotions to calm down, we come back to making informed choices, and we really work hard to bring the couple back together. And they are in such a different space because the forgiveness work's been done, there's surrender, and there's the willingness to listen to each other. So that's the miracle of the journey.
I love that. And I love the way that
Oh, I
you
can't
put
hear you,
this.
Kalpana.
Oh, weird. Huh. Wonder what happened. Hang on one second.
I'm not sure if it's just me.
Everything is on. Yeah, everything is on. I don't know what happened. Oh, darn it. Oh, bummer. It's like we were. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me now? Is it there?
You have been unmuted by the host. Yes, I can hear you, Kalpana. Can you hear me? No, it's gone again. Oh, wow.
Can you hear me now? Oh, bummer. I don't know. Well, at least we're at the end. I might say goodbye. Look, I don't know. Sorry.
I'm going to let you wrap up.
Yes. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. Bye. Well, I don't know. Life is incomplete if you don't have some technical difficulties during a show, right? But hey, I just love that I'm having these international guests and sometimes we have some problems, but that's all right. I'm glad it waited till the end to happen. At least we got through the whole interview and all the juicy, meaty stuff that we were wanting to hear. So again, I mean, what I was trying to say was that I love the way that she's focusing on the men first, earning their trust, then also working with each couple individually. I mean, each part of the couple individually, and then bringing them together. I feel that that's the way it should always be done. It ensures a greater amount of success. So anyway, I thought it was a wonderful interview and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. So next week, we are going to do a rebroadcast because again, I'm big on personal care and I've got some plans and I thought, you know what? it's time to focus on that. So I'm going to broadcast a surprise interview that, yes, it's a rebroadcast, but it's going to be fun seeing it again. It was one of the most watched ones, but I'm just not going to tell you what it is. You may see it on YouTube if you look later. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us again today on another episode of Gloves Off. And this was my third international guest. Woohoo. I'm so excited about that. And also just don't forget to subscribe to my channel, YouTube channel, drkalpana.unbound. And also I'm on Instagram under the same name, Facebook, and also LinkedIn. It's actually Dr. Kalpana Sundar. So you can find me anywhere. So please feel free to connect. And thank you again for joining us on this last beautiful weekend in October. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. And thanks so much for watching.